Truth. This is your host, Sir Patrick Mack. Boys and girls, are you ready?
Yeah.
I said, are you ready?
Yeah.
All right, sweet. Let's do it. I want to start today by up-to-date updating you on a story we talked about last week where the Vatican Secretary of State was raided. They got flagged by the Vatican Bank. And here's an update from the second off of CatholicCulture.org. 5 Vatican financial officials suspended after prosecutors raid. 5 Vatican officials, including the director of the Financial Information Authority, being the AIF, have been suspended in the wake of a stunning October 1st raid by Vatican prosecutors on the offices of the AIF and the Secretariat of State. Tommaso Di Ruzza, the director of the AIF, has been barred from his office, as has Monsignor Mauro Carlino, who heads the information section of the Secretariat of State. 3 other officers holding lesser posts have also been suspended. On October 2nd, the Vatican Gendarmerie posted a notice instructing offices that the 5 staff members should not be allowed into the Vatican because they are temporarily suspended from service. The Italian journal L'Espresso reported that the raids on Tuesday, in which police removed documents and electronic devices from the office, was a result of an investigation into suspicious real estate transactions in the millions. Remember that, real estate transactions. The transactions in question included sales of prime properties in London owned by the Vatican, L'Espresso said. Di Ruzza was appointed by Pope Francis in 2015 as director of the AIF, serving under the president René Brulhart. The AIF, ironically, was established in 2010 to monitor Vatican financial affairs, to guard against graft and money laundering. Prior to his current assignment in the information section of the Secretary of State, Monsignor Carlino was secretary to then Archbishop, now Cardinal, Angelo Beccio, who until June was the Sostituto, or Deputy Secretary of State. But let's just call him the Sostituto, in charge of the daily administration of Vatican affairs. He is now prefect of the Congregation for the Causes of Saints. According to L'Espresso, the suspicious transactions that are now under investigation date back to the period when Cardinal Beccio was Sostituto. The Vatican Press Office has not commented on the suspensions or on the raid, except to say that the raid was authorized by the Vatican's top prosecutor on the basis of an investigation that was triggered by concerns raised by the Institute for Religious Works, the Vatican Bank, and the Office of the Auditor General. In September 2017, the Auditor General Libero Milone was forced to resign after then Archbishop Beccio charged him with spying on the private lives of his superior and staff, including me. All right, very, very interesting. Now let me take you to LifeSiteNews.com for a possible explanation for new mind-boggling Vatican financial scandal. A shocking, unprecedented scene. Vatican police raiding the offices of the Vatican's own Secretariat of State, seizing documents and electronic devices. As usual, the Vatican is tight-lipped about this latest scandal, disclosing only that the Vatican's top prosecutor has been investigating questionable financial transaction. But wait, there's more! The Vatican Gendarmerie also raided the offices of the Financial Information Authority, like we were just talking about, which was set up precisely to guard against questionable transactions. And then that's Latin right there. Sed qui custodiet ipsos custodes. And that means, what's going on around here? No, it means who is guarding the guardians. What on earth is going on here? That's what I was saying. For a partial answer to that question, and I'll be the first to acknowledge that it's only a partial answer, please read through the final paragraph of today's follow-up CWN story on the suspension of 5 Vatican officials. And we just read you that. That's what we just finished. Here's what we know. For at least several months, the Vatican prosecutor has been investigating questionable financial transactions, which has been flagged by the Vatican Bank. and by the offices of the Auditor General. It's the latter, the Auditor General, that concerns us here. The office of the Auditor General is currently vacant. The work there is being done by an interim administrator. The last full-time Auditor General, Libero Milone, was forced to resign in June 2017. He was forced out by then Archbishop, now Cardinal, Angelo Becciu. Milone claimed that he had been ousted after he began hunting down financial irregularities. Becciu countered that Milone had been spying on his superiors. As I observed at the time, those charges are not mutually exclusive. Okay, so we actually had this guy, Milone, who was already looking into this. He gets forced out by then Archbishop, and of course he gets promoted to Cardinal. And now we have this interim administrator right at the time of a raid. That sounds like some sort of getting around red tape to me. One of the Vatican officials now suspended in connection with this investigation, Monsignor Mauro Carlino. Look at me, Carlino! Look at me, Carlino! I'm just a sostituto. Was until recently an aide to Becciu in the Secretariat of State. Those facts lead toward a possible explanation not only for this week's astonishing raids, but also for the dismissal of the Vatican's Auditor General. Milone, whose job was to ask questions about finances, became suspicious about some deals that flowed through the offices of the sostituto at the time, Becciu. And remember, these were real estate transactions. Becciu became aware that Milone was prying into the affairs of his office without Becciu's authorization, and was enraged. Becciu threatened Milone with criminal indictment for spying on his superiors, a threat that was withdrawn only after Milone resigned. Okay, so it looks like they put his feet to the fire after he was investigating these irregularities, as was his job. And of course, instead of getting indicted, because he was going to basically turn it around and say you were spying on us by looking into us, even though that was his job, the guy goes ahead and resigns, and then Becciu becomes now Cardinal. Those are established facts. Does this week's raid tell us that Milone had good reason to be suspicious? Probably. If not of Becciu, at least of his Carlino, his secretary. The Vatican prosecutor seems to think so. More facts will surely slowly emerge, but even after the few facts that have already come to light are sufficient to buttress one more argument that the Vatican cannot eliminate financial corruption as long as the Secretariat of State holds effective veto power over the Secretariat for the Economy. And remember, this is one of the largest banks in the world, so this is a big deal. Cardinal George Pell, brought to Rome to bring financial transparency to the Vatican, lost a key battle when his plan for an independent audit was blocked by the Secretariat of State. Milone, as Auditor General, lost his job when his quest for inside information was blocked by the Secretariat of State. Okay, now just remember who was in Rome. Not necessarily Vatican City, but in Rome. We recently had William Barr, and of course, Durham, even Sebastian Gorka. He was out there sipping his cafe, whatever. Now, as the Vatican prosecutor chasing down information that Milone left to his own devices might have uncovered more than 2 years ago, it seems likely that this latest scandal might have been avoided. By the way, consider this measure of the Vatican's commitment to financial transparency. In June 2017, when Milone resigned, the Vatican promised that a new Auditor General would be appointed as soon as possible. More than 2 years later, we're still waiting. Instead of filling this post, in February of this year, the Vatican issued new statutes for the office of the Auditor General, trimming his powers. Okay, so it looks like they kind of want to keep this guy floating in this office while this whole thing goes down, rather than appointing somebody, like they had said, as soon as possible. All right, so let's talk a little bit about this Giovanni Angelo Becciu. Seems like he's a key figure in all this. Keep in mind, this was at the time, Archbishop who was keeping Milone from doing this investigation. As a matter of fact, he was threatening him, saying that if you keep doing this investigation into these financial irregularities, we're going to indict you for spying. And this guy ends up just going ahead and resigning. So it sounds like there was something very, very serious there. Now, like I said, that was 2017, and he was an archbishop. Well, in June of 2018, Pope Francis made him a cardinal. And then again in August, he became the head of the Congregation for the Causes of Saints. So he stymies this investigation. And months later, he gets a heck of a promotion. A heck of a 2018, right? You bet you it is. You see what I did there? Anyway, in 2009, Raul Castro was patting this guy on the back for his work on improving improving relations between Cuba and the Holy See. And this guy is part of the Roman Curia. And that is a big deal. It's basically, it says here on Wikipedia that it's like a chief of staff. It is the administrative arm for the Holy See. So this guy essentially could be, in many senses, speaking for the Pope. Not always, but often going out and speaking for him. So this guy obviously has a whole bunch of weight. Now, if you'll remember this story from back in the day, it's been around 2012. It was another leak story. It was called the Vatileaks. And this involved, at the time, Pope Benedict XVI. His butler, his name was Paolo Gabriele. And he was caught with a bunch of documents in his hotel room or in his apartment. I'm sorry, I don't remember. But he was in his place of residence. And at the time, BitChute came out strong against this guy, this whistleblower here. And this is a little bit from Standard.net. On Tuesday, the Vatican Undersecretary of State, Archbishop Angelo BitChute, lashed out at what he called an unprecedented, brutal attack on the Pope, saying the stolen papers didn't just concern matters of internal church governance, but represented the thoughts of people who, in writing to the Pope, believed they were essentially speaking before God. So he was definitely protecting whatever these secrets were. But this happened in 2012, and this came on the heels of a previous incident where a journalist named Gianluigi Nuzzi, he had some letters that were implying a whole bunch of misdeeds from the Holy See too. Now, oftentimes when we think about the top of the Catholic Church, we think about obviously pedophilia and things like that. Of course, although that a lot of that stuff ends up being true. Once again, we were talking about money laundering. This was as far back as 2012. Money laundering. And again, remember, much of these details we're realizing has to do with real estate. Okay, so it's hard to know at this point if this was a legit raid or not. It seems like signs seem to point to a cover-up here, but we're not really sure. But we do know that this BitChute guy seems a little bit suspect, and it seems like he didn't want anybody looking into these financial misdealings. And remember, this all had to do with real estate. Now, oddly enough, just about a week ago, we had this gentleman right here. You may vaguely remember him, Timothy Cardinal Dolan, and he came out giving a little press conference just the other day in regards to the ongoing sex abuse scandal. Let's listen to just a little bit of that.
Regarding the sexual abuse of minors by clergy, I detailed such things as immediate reporting to the DA, our own investigation by outside forensic experts and a lay review board, our policy of zero tolerance that no priest with a substantiated abuse could ever be assigned or function again as a priest, our safe environment training and the background checks for all who work for the church, including clergy, and our outreach to help victims and their families, including the Independent Reconciliation and Compensation Program. The challenge, you might recall, I observed back then, was that people doubted the effectiveness and they doubted those very assurances.
Okay, so interestingly enough, this Cardinal Dolan was sort of brought in to clean up the image of the Catholic Church. And of course, he's got hefty work in front of him. I want to take you back to July of 2013 from the New York Times. This is entitled Cardinal Dolan and the Sexual Abuse Scandal. Tragic as the sexual abuse scandal in the Roman Catholic Church has been, it is shocking to discover that Cardinal Timothy Dolan, while Archbishop of Milwaukee, so keep in mind he was Archbishop of Milwaukee, he was eventually promoted to Cardinal, moved $57 million off the Archdiocesan books into a cemetery trust fund 6 years ago in order to protect the money from damaged suits by victims of abuse by priests. Okay, that's a lot to chew on there. Victims of abuse by priests. All that money got moved into a trust fund. Not just a trust fund, a cemetery trust fund. What does a cemetery need $57 million for? And again, we're talking about moving money. Now, of course, this was to protect these damaged suits. And it looks like they were holding it there, probably using it for future, they were obviously knowing they had a ton to clean up there, right? So $57 million moved into a cemetery trust fund. This sounds like what we're talking about. Cardinal Dolan, now the Archbishop of New York, has denied shielding the funds as an old and discredited allegation and malarkey. But newly released court documents make it clear that he sought and received fast approval from the Vatican to transfer the money just as the Wisconsin Supreme Court was about to open the door to damage suits by victims raped and abused as children by Roman Catholic clergy. Okay, so keep in mind this whistleblower, Paolo, back in 2012 was releasing stuff that sounds like it would have suggested some crazy money being moved. And here we are in 2013 talking about these same things, and it looks like Cardinal Dolan was playing cleanup man, and it looks like he's playing cleanup man again. Now it says right here, the release of about 6,000 pages of documents provided a grim backstage look at the scandal, graphically detailing the patterns of serial abuse by dozens of priests who were systematically rotated to new assignments as church officials kept criminal behavior secret from civil authority. Okay, and that's what's really been going on. A lot of times these guys get reassigned. As a matter of fact, the other whistleblower that I mentioned, Gianluigi Nuzzi, he was actually part of what got discovered is that he was being requested to be transferred too. So that's essentially what they were doing. But it looks like this guy, Cardinal Dolan, is the cleanup guy. Well, like I said, if you vaguely remember him, I'm going to go ahead and rememberize you with a new segment entitled Vague Memories.
And now it's time for Vague Memories.
You know, Cardinal Dolan and I have some things in common. For instance, we both run impressive properties on Fifth Avenue. Of course, his is much more impressive than mine. That's because I built mine with my own beautifully formed hands. While his was built with the hands of God, and nobody can compete with God. Is that correct? Nobody, right? That's right. No contest.
Okay, so you probably remember our boy now, and that was back in 2016 at the Al Smith charity dinner. And of course, both sides of the aisle have always attended this dinner for a very, very long time. And that is where President Trump really got up and kind of excoriated the deep state. And it was a really interesting time. If you've not seen that dinner, I highly suggest you check it out. It was some of President Trump's best work. But if you go back then, you see Maria Bartiromo's there, Chuck Schumer's there, and you see him putting the heat to a lot of people. And of course, Cardinal Dolan really got it kind of light. But there you have it. Now, to be fair, Cardinal Dolan has been notably conservative, obviously being a cardinal and before that an archbishop. They don't want to come out as publicly political at all. But he's a pro-life guy. He had slammed, as a matter of fact, right before that dinner, he had slammed Hillary Clinton, wanted her to apologize to the Catholic Church on her stance on abortion. But that never ended up happening. And even before that, in 2015, he's been all over Trump, particularly on his immigration policies, even going as far as to compare him to, a KKK leader, Nazi and this and that, all the usual things that we hear. Of course, he's slammed Trump on immigration. So he slammed both sides, but more notably Trump. But I don't really think it's about his politics here. This guy looked to be moving some money. And I think that that's probably what Trump was getting at there when he was referring to Mr. Dolan. Okay, so here we got this Cardinal Dolan, who back in 2013 was being investigated or trying to be investigated about this movement of funds, $57 million into a cemetery trust fund. And just recently he's come out talking about abuse. Well, all that money that was being moved into that trust fund was to shield themselves from abuse victims. And of course, this was all coming right around the same time we have this raid on the offices of the Secretary of State that's basically coming from the Vatican Bank's own prosecutor. Very, very strange indeed. They're being raided by themselves. This sounds like a serious cover-up, but we're over here on cardinaldolan.org, and we're going to take you to one of his blog posts from 2013. It's all the way down here, entitled Rebuild My Church, from October 15th. Good morning, buongiorno, happy Columbus Day. Welcome to this ritual of blessing our newly repaired and restored doors here at our cities, our nation's spiritual gem, America's Parish Church, our beloved St. Patrick's Cathedral. And him being, at the time, he would have been Archbishop. He would have been overseeing that. And if you'll remember, in 2017, there was a guy, Lamparello his name was, he walked into St. Patrick's, and I guess he was going to try and blow it up. He had a couple gas cans and a whole bunch of lighters. You may remember we reported on this story back then. And this guy was not just some knucklehead off the street. He was actually actually a PhD student, but I just want to remind you of that. Cardinal Egan, my brother's bishops, Monsignor Richie, the rector of this cathedral, my brother priest, join me in welcoming all of you inside and outside of this sacred temple, as do prominent board members, trustees, and allies. And here's some of the big names here. And I just want to point out a couple. I didn't get to look at all of them here. But Ken Langone. Ken Langone is a big-time supporter. He's from the Home Depot fortune. And he's a big-time conservative supporter. It's hard to really know what his deal is. He's got a ton of money from Home Depot fame, of course, and a lot of other things. But I do want to point out that he dedicated about $100,000 to the rebuilding of the Notre Dame Cathedral in France that had recently burned. Just saying. Also here, Sam and Melody Di Piazza. Sam Di Piazza is from the Price Waterhouse fame. And as a matter of fact, this guy was a part of Big Brothers, Big Sisters, which I think is a little sketchy, but I don't want to cast any aspersions on them at the moment. But big time money here. And of course, that's no big surprise. It's the Catholic Church. That's not necessarily nefarious. But I want to memorize you of this name right here, Danielle Bodini. Well, you may remember that name from this helicopter crash from June. Helicopter crashes into the Equitable Center in Midtown Manhattan. 1 dead. Now, it wasn't Danielle Bodini. It was the helicopter pilot. But this helicopter was registered to Danielle Bodini. And if you'll remember, this helicopter wasn't even supposed to be in the area. And it crashed at 787 7th Avenue, which is the AXA Equitable Center. Oddly enough, that center is also the home of Sidley Austin LLP. Now, if you don't know why that's relevant, I highly suggest you check out this video right here entitled The Weathermen, where I go into great deal about Sidley Austin LLP, and I want you to remember them because they're a very prolific law firm. They've been around for a while, really, ever since the establishment of the United States. As a matter of fact, Mary Todd Lincoln used them back in the day. But they've negotiated some big deals, and this was right where they were. I also want to point out that Sidley Austin had offices in the World Trade Center when that crashed. There are some connections there. Please go watch my video entitled The Weathermen. But this helicopter was registered to this Danielle Bodini. Now, he's a pretty powerful player himself. Here he is right there. Real estate guy. How about that? We were just talking about real estate, and this is from Forbes.com entitled, "Who is the owner of the helicopter that crashed, killed one in New York City?" And there he is. Danielle Bodini, the owner of the helicopter that crashed into an office building in Manhattan on Monday, is a longtime New York real estate scion who is heavily involved in the Italian-American community. And I want to note that they mentioned scion. I wonder if he's part of the Priory of Sion. Officials believe that Tim McCormick, that was the helicopter pilot, died in the crash. Bodini founded the real estate investment company American Continental Properties. He was also United Nations ambassador to the Republic of San Marino, a small independent country in northern Italy, from 2005 to 2016. And then it talks about these foundations right here. I want to point out this one right here, the Foundation for Italian Art and Culture. And here's their site right here. And as you can see right here highlighted, he is the chairman there. Oh, excuse me, I'm trying to highlight it, Danielle Bodini. But I want to point out down here under the advisors in the United States, I saw some pretty interesting ones, particularly this one right here. And this is Dr. Ian Wardropper, director of the Frick Collection in New York. Now, if that doesn't ring bells for you, I highly suggest you check out this video entitled "What the Frick is Going On?", where I'm talking about art collection, its relation to how I think they're funneling money to fund this whole human trafficking organization. But more importantly, remember the Frick Center was located directly across the street from Jeffrey Epstein's massive place in Manhattan. This means something. The Frick Collection means something. So please go check out both those videos if you've not seen them, The Weathermen and What the Frick is Going On, and you'll start to see where we're making some connections here. We have the Catholic Church, Jeffrey Epstein, and we've got all this really tons of different organizations that are whether they're slush funds or foundations or whatnot. But I was suggesting that a lot of this was going through places like the Frick Collection. And as you can see, one of the advisors here in Italy, a few down here, is this Antonio Paolucci, right in the center of your screen, director of the Vatican Museum. So how about that? Our real estate scion has some connections with the Vatican. Well, not just a few. He's got some big ones. I'm going to take you back to 1979 when he got married Toni Allen Kramer, daughter of Mr. and Mrs. Irwin Hamilton Kramer of New York and Sands Point, was married yesterday to Danielle Damaso Bodini of New York. The ceremony was performed at the Kramer home in Sands Point. Well, who would perform that ceremony? None other than Archbishop Giovanni Celli, representative of the Vatican to the United Nations. And keep in mind, Bodini later became a representative to the United Nations himself. Mr. Bodini is a son of Mrs. Franco Bodini of Rome and the late Mr. Bodini. Now, I did a little bit of looking on them, and I wasn't able to find a ton here. But it looks like he married another pretty wealthy person here. Talking about the bride here, I don't want to go into their history right there, but lots of money, and it looks like lots of connections within the Vatican. Let's put on our possibility pants for a second here and take a breath. Here we have the Catholic Church, long mired in scandal. And recently, we've got Cardinal Dolan coming out talking about this abuse. Now, he's, of course, been involved in at least some of this scandal. Not sure whether or not he's actually trying to cover up the abuse or not, but he's there to kind of clean up the mess. We do know he was moving money into this really suspicious trust fund. We also know that one of his trustees seems to be this Danielle Bodini. This is all coming just as the Vatican is essentially raiding themselves over essentially what we've just been talking about, right? Movement of money. Was this movement of money also to protect more abuse scandals that might be coming out? Not really sure, but we're starting to see the connections. And here we have this guy, Danielle Bodini, who I have no idea where he is right now, but he's obviously a real estate scion. That's funny because we were talking about real estate dealings. That's what most of this money being moved around was being investigated for. And we know he's connected, at least indirectly, but he's obviously supported. He must be aware of Cardinal Dolan, and he seems to be connected to the Frick Center. We know the Frick Center is connected to a lot of creepy stuff. We think that he's probably it's probably connected to Epstein, given the fact that they're right across the street. And like I said, go watch that video to get some of those connections. But certainly, this Danielle Bodini wouldn't be connected to Epstein, would he? Except for the fact that he's on the Epstein flight logs. No, right? Now, I want to point out that this guy, Giovanni Celli, who married Bodini back in the day, back in 1979, at the time he was an archbishop, but of course he was an ambassador to the United Nations, and of course Bodini was also connected to the United Nations. But this guy was also a part of the Roman Curia, which, like I said, was a big deal, representative for the Holy See. And one of his big issues, of course, was migration, much like this Cardinal Dolan and much like our current Pope. So it all starts to come together a little bit. There's a lot more research I'd like to do on this, particularly some of these foundations. And it's really difficult finding out what's really going on with this guy, Bodini, but he was obviously well connected. Now, he didn't die in that helicopter crash. It was his helicopter pilot. We don't know what really became of this guy, but we do know that he was on the Epstein flight logs, and it looks like I had obtained a more recent version, and they had taken that name off. So there you go. Now, I'm over here on qmap.pub, and I'm just kind of quickly scrolling. I've got highlighted in red Godfather 3 there. You can go check it out for yourself. I just want to point out that Q has mentioned Godfather 3 quite a few times. Now, I don't know if I'm way off here or not, but the plot of Godfather 3 seems to be playing out very much like this Catholic Church scandal. And if you'll remember, our character in Godfather 3 is Michael Corleone, who had just recently, not in this movie, but the previous movie, had killed Fredo, the very name that we had given for Cuomo over there on CNN. But anyway, he was feeling bad about killing Fredo, and he decides that he's going to go ahead and legitimize this operation. Let me keep scrolling so you can see all this here. But what does he do? He decides to invest in the Catholic Church. How about that? And in the beginning of the movie, we see a papal induction, a new pope, oddly enough, at St. Patrick's Cathedral. How about that? So what does he do? He gives $600 million to the Catholic Church, which just happened to be in a deficit, very much like the Catholic Church was when Cardinal Dolan took over. So Corleone gives $600 million basically in return for an exchange of what? Shares in an immobiliare. And what is an immobiliare? It's an international real estate developing firm. And of course, this ended up being sketchy, and I don't want to give away the plot of the movie. You can go check it out for yourself. But it looks like this is playing out. And it looks like these trusts, these real estate firms are starting to be connected. Maybe that's what they're trying to cover up over there at the Vatican. But although we know they're moving money, what is the moving of the money hiding? Well, likely something much bigger, which I think has to do with human trafficking. Finally, let me leave you with one last thing. This is an article from France TV Info from 2016 talking about this island called Ile Berder. And as you can see, it's a tiny little island with one old hotel there. Now, I don't know a whole lot about the hotel. It's connected or almost connected to the mainland there. And it looks like a ferry goes over from time to time. And when the tides rise and fall, depends on when you can go over there. It's intermittent. So there's restricted access to the island. Obviously, as you can see, it's small. The only thing there is pretty much that space right there. But what I found interesting about this is that it is owned by an immobilier called Gibois. Now, I don't know much about them. I haven't been able to figure out too much about them because most of the stuff's in French. I haven't been able to figure out. But what reminded me about this, and we talked about this probably over a year ago, this very same island, is that this Ile Berder has an immobilier that just happens to own this tiny little mysterious island that has restricted access. And knowing what we know about things such as Epstein's Island, these are the things that I tend to look at. But even more odd, was this the Berder that President Trump was referring to in his famous January 2019 tweet where he was talking about hamburgers? Don't really know, but I thought this was an interesting connection. And if any of you French patriots or French-speaking patriots could help out on this, or maybe finding some origins to this Gibois, maybe that would help us answer some questions. All right, patriots, that's all I got for you for now. I want to let you know that I am aware of this USMC call-up situation, and I'm kind of following it. I've been following the Dave Hodges show, like many of you guys too, in regards to this. I'm not really sure what to make of it as of yet. I've seen the Marine page website, so you don't need to send me that, and please don't send me any more Dave Hodges links because I already follow him. He does great work, and I'm following along with a lot of you too. But I will be, if I have something more to contribute, I will put something out in the nearby future on that. Also, there was an explosion last night, underground transformer in the old village area of Huntington Beach, and that's a pretty old area there. I do want to point out that there is a mosque nearby, real close nearby, and I don't know how many people have been total injured now at this point, but it was a pretty big deal, and because I was working on this story, I wasn't able to catch that. But explosion in Huntington Beach. If any of you have any local information, rather than just simple articles that I can Google, I can find that on my own. But if you've got any local experience or anything that you'd like to offer on that, I may want to get pursuity on that real soon for you. If there seems to be anything suspect in regards to that, you guys can let me know. Until then, that's all I got for you. As always, if you like this video, please click like, share, and subscribe. Thanks to all of you who do that already. I appreciate it so much. And if you are new to my channel, welcome to you. Please understand that from time to time, you're going to get unclicked, unnotified, and unsubscribed. And I know how difficult it is to get notified of my videos or to even find them sometimes. So I highly suggest bookmarking my page. I'm going to say it again. I highly suggest bookmarking my page. You don't need to let me know that you're being unsubscribed. Just do me a favor and click yourself back. That's just a little battle that we have with social media. All my alternate links are down below. My Gab, my Real.video, which is Brighteon now, my DropSpace, BitChute, all that stuff is down below. I got a new Gab if you want to join me over there at IPOT 1776. That's the same as my Twitter. If you're on Twitter, please give me a join at IPOT 1776. All those links are down below. My email is down below if you want to send me some information. Please do not DM me. Please email me. It's the only place I check for information. If you're DMing me and then you're angry because I'm not responding to you, it's because you didn't listen to this part of the video. I'm just saying. And I want to give a big thanks to all of you who've been sending stuff to my P.O. Box. My P.O. Box is also linked down below. Thanks to all of you who've been doing that. I don't really get a chance to check it a lot, but I do from time to time. And thank you so much. So many of you guys have sent such great gifts, cards, pictures, sharing me, with me a lot of information about your life, which is really exciting, books, and all sorts of fun stuff. So thank you so much. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you guys. I really, really do. You guys help keep me motivated and moving and sitting in this chair so that I can keep searching videos like this for yourself. And if you want to support this channel, my Patreon is also linked down below. It's all down below. If you scroll down below the video, you're going to see this little see more. Click on the see more. It's not a button. It'll just say see more. Click on it and you're going to see all the links to the show and all the alternate links that I just showed you. And if you're liking that opening jam, that's also linked down below. It's all down below. All right, Patriots, this is Sir Patrick Mack, and until next time, stay funky.